All right, we will get started. Started on time and ending on time. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this afternoon for this conversation about reopening our school district and our school district's buildings. Joining me, I am Lou Bell Brown, and I have the honor and privilege of serving as superintendent here. I've been here 10 school years now, and I'm joined by my amazing colleagues, Lily Talcott, who's the deputy superintendent, and Carrie Burke, who's our coordinator of health and wellness. Today, we wish to share with you some information, our planning to this point, and we wish to take questions from you all. As this is a very iterative process, we get new information from our state and new information from this deadly virus each and every day. And as I've said to folks, the virus and our governor will be dictating much about what the reopening of our schools will look like. It's up to us to plan for every scenario we can think of, and we've done so. We've been in collaborations with our administrators, our teachers, and now with our community and students as we put together a plan for re-entering our school buildings in the safest, most effective, and efficient way possible. We wish to thank you for your many, many efforts over the past 3 months. This has been an unprecedented and hard crisis for all of us. Our school district had to rethink its instructional delivery model overnight and do our best to meet the needs of all learners. You, as families, have had to adjust in your personal lives in support of us, and we wish to say thank you. We're obviously in this together, and our collective efforts have benefited our community in many, many ways and have set us up to reopen in a safe and effective manner. And we will be sharing some of that thinking today. Again, we do not have all the answers as of this moment. We're in the midst of closing one school year, but thinking about opening another. And if any superintendent, any school leader, any politician says that I know what it's going to look like in the fall, they're mistaken. None of us know exactly what it's going to look like in the fall. We hope to be prepared for anything that comes at us, and that's going to require us all to be patient. There will be things we will not be able to answer for you all today. There will be questions you have that will go unanswered. There will be frustrations because of us not being able to share very detailed plans. But please hang with us. Please continue to give us your feedback. Please continue to help us build out what will be a new and even better school district when we reopen. Ms. Talcott and Ms. Burke will be sharing with you how we're thinking about our school district, and it must be and should be different when we reopen, and why it should be, and how we hope that it will be different. And we're asking for your partnership in making that amazing, equitable, inclusive, and responsive vision come true. So again, thank you all for joining. And with that, I will turn it over to Ms. Talcott, who is going to begin the presentation and share with you our thinking to this point at 4:03 on this Tuesday afternoon. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Brown. Thank you so much to all of you for joining us this afternoon. And thank you so much for all of the work you've been doing with your children and collaborating with our school staff over these last 3 months. It's been extraordinary and incredibly challenging. We're looking forward to thinking about how to actually reopen our spaces, and we can't wait to see our students and staff again. So Carrie and I are going to walk through some slides and take your questions and provide as much information as we have over the next 45 minutes, right? So our goals really for this session are to develop our collective mindset, right? How are we thinking about this together? And also to begin to develop a partnership for reopening. So this is one of many sessions, and we'll continue to engage over the summer as well. So for the next 25 to 30 minutes, Carrie and I are going to be doing some talking, right? We're going to be placing ourselves within our vision and mission. And then we're going to be talking about our 4 pillars for reopening and the ways in which we're thinking about our reopening plan. We'll discuss our 5 reopening scenarios and opportunities for ongoing collaboration. So for those who perhaps just joined, just so you know, I'm Lily Talcott. I am your Deputy Superintendent, and I'm joined here with Dr. Brown, the Superintendent, and Carrie Burke, our Coordinator of Health and Wellness. So we enter reopening with an understanding of our history, right, where we've been, and also of our present, right, where we are today. We're going back way, way up. Many of you may be familiar with our Board of Education Vice President. His name is Dr. Sean Eversley Bradwell, and he wrote his dissertation when he was at Cornell. He now teaches at Ithaca College. He entitled it Always Room at the Top, and it's a look at the history of the Ithaca City School District and its relationship to race. Now, at the end, he has this incredible appendix where he includes a time loop, not a timeline, a time loop, because he talks about how time, frankly, isn't linear and it tends to fold in on itself. So backing way, way up, the beginning of Ithaca High School is founded in 1875. And 4 years later, Jesse A. Johnson was the first student who's Black who graduates from the Ithaca High School. He's also the son of the Underground Railroad conductor, George A. Johnson. We'll fast forward about 90 years or so, and one of many reports comes out from academia that indicates the educational system, right, the system of education is at fault for racial and class disparities in terms of achievement, right? It's not the people, right? It's the actual system and the institution. Fast forward about another 50 years, and half of our students at Ithaca High School walk out, 2007, because they're demanding racial justice. Fast forward to not this past weekend, but the weekend before, and our students held a very peaceful protest, again, demanding racial justice. They'll read the news, right? Last weekend, New York Times. It's unbelievable that we have to keep doing this. Locally, the Ithaca Voice, women-led rally for racial justice draws crowd to downtown Ithaca as protests continue. The Wall Street Journal, protests nationwide demand justice system overhaul. Some of you may be familiar with Kendi's work. He wrote a book called How to Be an Anti-Racist, excellent book. And in it, he has this quote: "The opposite of racist isn't not racist, it's anti-racist." What's the difference? One endorses either the idea of a racial hierarchy as a racist or racial equality as an anti-racist. One either believes that problems are rooted in groups of people as a racist, or locates the roots of problems in power and policies as an anti-racist. One either allows racial inequities to persevere as a racist, or confronts racial inequities as an anti-racist. There is no in-between safe space. I'm not racist. And so as we reopen the Ithaca City School District, we're working to do so in a way that's actively anti-racist, actively anti-oppression, actively anti-marginalization. That means we're looking at our policies, our practices, our basic logistics, everything from grading to scheduling, right? The ways in which we provide choice or don't, right? And we know that this fits well within our vision and mission. Our vision is 6,000 plus thinkers. And we get to this vision by engaging in our mission over and over. Right? Our mission is engage, educate, and empower. How do we do this? How do we reopen in a way that is actively anti-racist and also keeps kids and staff safe. So Carrie, again, our coordinator of health and wellness, is going to walk us through some slides to help us picture it a little bit more. Thank you, Lily. Again, my name is Carrie Burke, Coordinator of Health Services and Wellness for the district. It's my pleasure to be with you here today. As Dr. Brown said at the outset of our session, there are many things that will be dictated to us in terms of reopening. And I think what I'd like all of us to carefully consider are the opportunities that we have to shape what that looks like in our school communities. One thing we can expect that will persist with any reopening is social distancing. Here on the screen, you have an image of a school in France that recently reopened in the last 2 months. And by all accounts, they are meeting all of the requirements of social distancing, using boxes marked on a playground, a play space, to indicate where children can engage in themselves in play or recess. And so although we can appreciate and anticipate what some of the rules may be with respect to reopening, it's important for us to think about the implementation and the opportunities that lie there. Does something like this reflect our vision, our mission, our values, our priorities, or even our culture? Because this is also social distancing. And I think this likely reflects the vision and mission and culture of their school community. This image is also from another school in France, which normally has a very centralized decision-making apparatus in terms of education. So they've allowed schools to have some latitude in how they implement the measures. And that's what I'm demonstrating here with these images. That although there may be many things that are dictated to us, we have the opportunity, not even just the opportunity, but the responsibility to realize them in a way that maintains not only health and safety, but the dignity of our students. Not only upholding their dignity and health and well-being, but also affirming them. I think many of you have probably had the opportunity to be out in public, whether it be to the grocery store or a drugstore. I'm sure you've all had exposure to the signage or indicators to help you with social distancing, those prompts, those visual prompts. Here too is another example of the opportunity that exists for us as a district to implement the requirements in a way that not only upholds, again, health and safety, but affirms our students. It's hard to say what a return to school would look like at this point. Again, the virus and state and federal agencies will have a lot to say about what that exactly looks like. But here's some examples of what in-person education could look like from schools in other countries that have reopened or remained open during the closure. Those rules around social distancing and mask wearing hold up in a classroom setting. On the right here, you see a teacher wearing a protective face mask, while the students with their desks several feet apart are not wearing them. Alternatively, in the image on the left, you have students wearing masks, sitting in much closer proximity. We anticipate the guidance will be to some degree prescriptive, but others will have to account for variations in our space and how they're utilized. Additionally, we'll have to be incredibly flexible with how we think about reopening school. Here you have an example of students in Denmark participating in a music lesson. The outdoors has become a classroom. And with respect to our daily rituals, the classroom is now turned into a lunchroom. We'll not only will we have to be student-centric and affirming in our decision-making, but we'll have to be flexible. In this new paradigm, there exist opportunities, and we will not lose sight of them. I like this image. It serves a few purposes. One, the opening of doors and windows, one of the many recommendations to improve circulation or ventilation in our spaces, but also it serves as an invitation to rethink our policies, our procedures, our practices, and to engage in collective decision-making that's grounded in affirmation of our students and our culture of love, and that is actively anti-racist. Thank you, Carrie. There are 4 pillars of reopening, essentially the 4 areas in which we're planning for reopening our physical spaces. An overview is linked down there. It's just that short URL there. It's also listed on our website, and Dr. Brown shared it this past weekend in his weekly letter. The first pillar is culture. The second is physical and environmental health and safety. The third is social, emotional, and academic learning. And the fourth is communication. We recognize as well that there is a great deal of overlap among these. And we want to make sure that that's clear. We understand that clearly we need to communicate also about social, emotional, and academic learning, right? That culture fits in everywhere as well, right? So what are the 5 reopening scenarios that we alluded to earlier? I'll begin by again reiterating that much of this will be determined by our state, and we'll learn what we're permitted to do and what we're not. Over here on the left are the various scenarios, and over here on the right are the CDC steps for reopening school. So the first one is continue full distance learning. That's step 1 through the CDC. And that is obviously our school buildings are physically closed. Step 2 would be a staggered return, or I'm sorry, a scenario 2 would be a staggered return. So something such as students in the morning, one cohort, and then another cohort in the afternoon, and every other day, or some other sort of back and forth approach, and that would be step 2. The CDC indicates that that would be school buildings are open with enhanced social distancing measures. The third scenario would be a partial return. For example, some students of particular grade bands return to physical spaces while others continue to engage in distance learning. Again, that's step 2. The fourth would be a blended option-based model where families would make decisions based on their circumstances about how much in-person schooling their child would receive and how much distance learning their child would receive. So for example, it might work best for a family to have their child home 2 days, but be in school for 3 days. And then the fifth scenario would be an in-person return with some exceptions for vulnerable populations. And that's step 3, schools are open, again, with some exceptions, and the CDC has been clear about which particular pre-existing conditions folks take into account. And again, we anticipate receiving guidance from the state, both the state education department and the state Department of Health regarding what that will look like and what those exceptions will be. So the first pillar is culture. How do we ensure that we're maintaining our culture here in the ICSD, in our school district, and really affirming our students, right, and also keeping them safe? Well, We know that we need to think collectively, each of us, right, including the students, including the staff. We need to act individually. So I wash my hands, both to protect myself, but also to protect the group, right? I wear a mask as an adult, same thing. I cover my mouth when I sneeze or when I cough, right, and my shoulder, I'm sorry, in my elbow as well. So I'm engaging in individual actions in order to protect the collective good. We also know that we need to just engineer the environment for both affirmations. We want to affirm our young people and our staff, right? And also we want to keep things safe. So what do we mean by that? What might that look like? If you see over here on the left, there's an example of what's called a sensory pathway that can also double as a reminder for social distancing measures. If they're child-centered, they're affirming, right? So the work that we've done with Dr. Shiraki Holly has been excellent around culturally responsive practices, and that work will be more important ever than probably ever than it ever has been, right? So we need to validate and affirm cultural behaviors and build and bridge those school-based behaviors. Additionally, we all need to re-norm together around what we do when students and staff naturally want to be close to each other, when we're trying to engage in these social distancing measures. We know that people seek connection, right? Physical connection. And rather than punish or discipline when that happens, we want to engage in conversation. So what happened? Why did it happen? What harm might that have caused? Who might it have harmed? And in what ways can we restore that relationship and restore our community? Right? Our next pillar is physical and environmental health and safety. A healthy, safe, and supportive environment is most conducive to effective teaching and learning. And so we are considering a multitude of strategies, often organized through the hierarchy of controls, to do just that. The idea is to consider our environment and our policies, a prevention through design approach of hazard and risk reduction, normally applied to manufacturing processes and similar work. We, in terms of our facilities, are not necessarily building new spaces in response to the virus, but we are considering changing the configuration of our classrooms and how we use those spaces. In terms of processes, daily screening is one that we can expect to be doing, as well as regular hand washing. And then in terms of products, although we do not manufacture products, we do educate, engage, and empower our community. And so it's the collective action of individuals in creating environments that support those health-affirming behaviors that are going to create the best case scenarios for reducing the risk of contracting the coronavirus, the novel coronavirus, with reopening. I think it's important to note that these measures, as thorough as they may be, it's not possible to guarantee that there will be zero risk of transmission in our schools. It's just something we're not capable of doing. But I think it's also important to remember that we are lucky to live in a community that individuals like yourselves have taken it upon yourself to engage in personal hygiene and social distancing, which has allowed us to escape the worst effects of this pandemic. We still have fewer than 200 cases in our county. The overall incidence remains low. Since the beginning of testing in our county, the positive test percentage has hovered just over 1%, as compared to 13% statewide, or 10% in the upstate region, excluding New York City. So we're grateful to you for the things that you've done, the work that you've engaged in around the C's of coronavirus prevention, which includes individual actions like cleaning your hands, cleaning shared surfaces or items, covering your mouth and nose when you cough or sneeze, covering your face when you are in public and aren't able to socially distance, containing the spread of germs by staying home and seeking medical care as needed. It's these individual actions that generate a large effect. And so as an organization, we are looking at what we can do from an administrative and an engineering level to support those very behaviors. Additionally, you as a community have avoided closed spaces with poor ventilation, crowded places with many people, and close contact settings. We know when these three things are occurring at the same time, that increases the risk of a cluster of cases or super spreading event. So again, supporting individual decision-making by the design of our spaces and our processes will create an environment that supports positive outcomes in terms of health and safety and also learning. Social, emotional, and academic learning is our next pillar. Social, emotional learning first, very intentionally. Right? We know that many of our students had had extraordinarily varied experiences since March 13th, 2020, when we closed our physical spaces, and we know that we need to attend to those social emotional needs. Additionally, academic learning is really the cornerstone, right? It's like what we do, right? So we understand that and are recognizing and making plans for ensuring that our staff have time to plan for those academic needs over the summer in order to prepare for really meeting students where they are, right? And accessing their strengths and pushing them further, right, in order to help them grow. So some of our foundational elements are going to be the same, right? We know that we want to provide an anti-racist education for our students. We know that we need to continue supporting social emotional learning through our ruler approach, culturally responsive practices that validate, affirm, and build and bridge for students, inclusive practices, ways in which we're supporting students' academic growth all together, right, in heterogeneous groupings and at times homogeneous groupings, right? And teaching and learning innovation. So in what ways are we really using those academic standards to create meaningful learning experiences for our young people? Right, you might hear about project-based learning or other very authentic community-based experiences that we're providing for our young folks. Here's an example over here on the left. Sean is a high school math teacher, and on Thursday, June 4th, he engaged with students in both discussions of the mathematical content that they were learning and engaged them in discussions about how to have conversations with peers and others about issues of race, racism, and anti-racism. Here's another example from Anna, who teaches art at LACS. She sent masks, pre-made masks, to each of her students and engaged them in a project for them to authentically share how they were experiencing this stay-home order. So here's Anna herself in her mask. And here are a number of student examples as well. They work together to create a video to put together as a final project. New elements of social, emotional, and academic learning. This blended learning approach. When we talk about blended learning, we're talking about a combination of in-person and distance learning, frankly, in any form, right? So we could begin the school year in person and then switch to distance learning. Or if we go with the staggered approach, right, or the back and forth approach, it may be a combination of both, even within a given week. With blended learning, there is additional voice and choice for students in terms of pace, in terms of schedule, right, and sometimes even in terms of the content, as long as we're still meeting those academic standards. We also talk about enhanced partnerships as another part of our new approach. Our homes have been transformed into classrooms. You as caregivers and now instructors have been instructors. We also know that we need to leverage those resources that we have within the community in different ways, right? We need to engage with you as families in ways that we had not prior to March 13th. And we still have room to grow in terms of engaging with families and caregivers, right? Similarly with community partnerships. There are local supports that we know that we have and we need to access even more. And there's also national ones such as the Yale Center for Social and Emotional Intelligence as well that we've been working with as well. There's the last example. This is Abigail. She's a kindergarten teacher at Fall Creek. And we highlight and end on this example for social, emotional, and academic learning because she combines the two so well. So this week, Abigail, this particular week, she had sent home masks and capes to all of her students so that they could joyfully be super readers to practice their decoding, right, their actual reading skills and their comprehension strategies. Again, it's just a wonderful combination of bringing joy to learning, right, and attending to their wishes and their desires to be superheroes, right, but also really focusing on challenging academic standards for our young people. Our last pillar is communication. And we appreciate that independently it's vital to our success with any reopening scenario, but it's interwoven into the fabric of the other pillars that we've discussed. As Dr. Brown mentioned at the outset, this is an iterative process. And so today our goals are really, as Lily shared earlier, to create a collective mindset. So our activities this month are largely focused on information giving and information gathering to ensure that people have information to assist with their understanding and to collect information about attitudes, opinions, and preferences that will support our decision making. Just last week, we launched a student survey for students in grades 6 through 12. Earlier this week, you received an invitation to participate in a parent caregiver survey. Our staff have also been invited to participate in their own survey. There's been a lot that they've learned in the last few months, a lot that you have learned in the last few months with respect to distance learning, and we want to collect your insights and thoughts and feedback on that, as well as your thoughts and feedback on reopening. We conducted a series of staff information sessions, and we're now currently engaged in providing these same information sessions to our community members, as well as our students. Next month, our activities will shift to consultation and participation with the aim of obtaining feedback on policies or proposals and engaging people actively to ensure their concerns are understood and considered and to incorporate those into our decision making. So we'll be conducting professional development and training for our staff. We'll be organizing staff task forces, as well as functional area meetings to ensure our operations are prepared for a reopening scenario, whatever it may be, as well as focus groups for our key stakeholders, which include yourself. And then lastly, in August, we will shift to collaboration and information giving with continued stakeholder consultation. And so many of the activities that we discussed with respect to July will be continuing, and we will be coming back to you to ensure that you have accurate and timely information with respect to our reopening scenario. But this work is not just synchronous, as we are doing here today, but also asynchronous. So we invite you to submit your questions, your feedback or concerns, to send an email to ICSD Communications, or to reach out to your building principal, to use the Let's Talk application on our website, or to call us and leave a message. I think that was indicated at the outset, we are generating an FAQs, and we will pause now to take your questions. Thank you. Folks, thank you. There have been wonderful questions who have already been coming in. Let's see, we've got, thank you so much everyone who's using the Q&A function. That is the easiest way, frankly, for us to download these to then craft our FAQ section on our website that we'll be putting up soon, and then also continually updating. We'll start with a great first question, which is, are you also considering a reclosing plan too? This is wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. Carrie, do you want to start with that? Yes, I think in any reopening scenario, particularly if it's an in-person reopening scenario, we do have to be prepared for the possibility that we will be closed. That's a determination with the county health department based on a confirmed case. What we've been instructed to date is that a school site would close for at least 24 hours, and any extension beyond that would again be determined by the county health department. Great, thank you, Carrie. So there's also a question about class by class scenarios. So thinking about things like music class or PE class, other academic learning that may present particular challenges, right? I think many of us who have seen the news are aware of, say, the super spreading event that occurred in Washington State at a choir concert, right? And so the answer is yes. So Carrie showed that image of music class that's being held outside, for example. So we're considering alternative spaces, enhanced social distancing, and other options there. Our Director of Fine and Performing Arts, in addition with Carrie and others myself, have been engaged in significant research regarding best practices, both in terms of safety and instruction, in terms of how to actually support student learning safely, particularly around music, right? Because of the increased risk of spreading the disease through respiratory droplets. Great. See, there are a lot of wonderful questions that are coming in. Information about after-school activities. I can start, Carrie, and then if you want to jump in. So many of our school buildings and spaces are utilized for standalone after-school programs. We don't yet know if we'll be permitted to open our buildings up, right? Both obviously for school in general, but also then for after-school activities. And there are a number of things that we have to consider, everything from cleaning and additional social distancing measures as well. We also are very clear that our community really needs this, right? And so, and we as family people as well, right? Family folks do as well. So we're certainly going to stay in communication with folks. We also partner with the Child Development Council that oversees and connects with different child care centers and after-school programs as well. Carrie, did I miss anything there? Wonderful. So there's a question about handling social distancing in hallways that are easily overcrowded. Carrie, can you talk about some of the considerations?
Yes, thank you for that question. There are a number of potential scenarios. Certainly if we are in a reopening scenario where we don't have all the students in the building at a given time, that will certainly reduce the number of persons in a hallway. We are also looking at staggered release times. So for students at the secondary level who move between rooms to access their instruction, that we might have longer passing periods. We may even implement sort of a one-way. As you walk into a hallway, you always go to the right. So there's a whole range of strategies that can be implemented to reduce traffic in hallways. In addition to the signage, we plan to include, particularly for our elementary students, similar to our sensory pathways to help support social distancing as they move through the hallway.
We've got a series of wonderful questions that I'm going to try to break down together. There's some questions about engaging with students and finding some challenges with student attendance when we're engaged in remote learning, and how to encourage that attendance and maybe be flexible about those meeting times and whether teachers will have control over that. That's an excellent question. We have been engaged in, I think, a truly wonderful collaboration with our union leadership in order to figure out ways in which to better meet student needs and meet the needs of our educators as well. So we certainly want to empower our educators to work with families to figure out what works best as well. There's also a question about professional development around culturally responsive practices and anti-racist practices as well. So currently, we'll just give you a little bit of scope here. We are currently gathering information from our staff regarding their wishes for professional development. Right, so we've provided a number of options, and so in that survey, they're providing feedback there as well. And so then we're working collaboratively with our union leadership folks in order to design what those next steps will be, right? And within all of those options, there are culturally responsive and anti-racist elements, right? Some very explicitly, and some also then infused as well. And so we anticipate starting that professional development likely in late July and also in August. And then there's another question about PPE. Carrie, do you want to talk about personal protective equipment? And then we are going to close things out.
Yes, happy to. Thank you, Lily. Yeah, so in terms of PPE, what we're largely talking about is masks or face coverings. And so we have some interim guidance that was provided to us just last week, actually, with respect to in-person programming for extended school year. And what it indicates there is that staff are required to wear a face covering, particularly when they are within 6 feet of another individual, whether that be a colleague or a student. We plan to provide PPE to our staff, which can take the form of a surgical mask or a face shield. We recognize that for some students, in order to access instruction, they really need to see the entire face of their instructor, particularly with some therapies like speech therapy or even reading instruction. With respect to students at this time, what we've been advised is that they're strongly encouraged but not required to wear a face covering. But yet again, we will also have surgical masks, pediatric surgical masks, especially for the young ones available if they happen to lose theirs or don't have access to one from home.
Thank you, Carrie. We've received a number of questions as well about our timeline. So I think we'll close in terms of that. And we do want to respect everyone's time and said that we would end at 4:45. So our timeline for making a decision will again be frankly dictated by the state. As soon as we know more information about when those plans are due, we'll certainly be putting that out. We are hopeful that we will have everything clarified by August, right? But we also know that it's certainly too soon to tell if that's precisely when that will be. But please check social media, please check our website, please check your email. We'll continue to provide updates as we learn more information and we further develop those plans. Again, thank you for all of the work that you're doing with your young people, with our young people. We are so grateful, and we frankly cannot thank you enough. Thank you as well for joining us this afternoon. We will use your questions to help us develop a clearer and more detailed FAQ section as well. Thank you, everyone, and we'll talk soon. Goodbye.